Hi, this is Mike, and I'm coming to you today with a tutorial on Game Creator 2, which is a great asset for making games in Unity, sort of a visual scripting engine, but it comes with a lot of tools in order to make games easier. So today I'm going to talk about input control. So by default, Game Creator comes with a player controller that has default inputs of WASD and the arrow key. So I'm just going to start with, we're going to take a new plane and we're going to make a player as well, player character. And the plane did not create, so it didn't create it at the origin. So I'm going to reset the position so that so now the player is standing on the plane, just to give us area to walk around with. So by default, Game Creator 2, and I'm going to create a camera shot as well, but I'm using the WASD keys. And if I turn on my capture, you can see at the side of the screen what keys I'm pressing. So WASD, and then the arrow keys are also working by default. So, and let me create a camera shot to make that easier. But camera shot. I'm going to create a follow target camera shot. By default, it follows the player, so that should be sufficient. And now we can see the WASD and the. So what happens though if you want to do key rebinding? So by default, if you look at the player controller, it's set to directional, which is WASD. So if you click here, it's set to primary motion. And if you look in here, that's in the usage primary motion. And in the tooltip, it says it's WASD keys on the keyboard and left stick on gamepads. But so automatically. But what if you don't want to use WASD? What if you want to let your player rebind the keys to something else, like IJKL or some other thing? By default, you can't do that with this. There's no, like, Game Creator 2 does not support rewired, for instance, which would make it allow you to do that. But so what we have to do is tell Game Creator 2 to use an input map instead from the new input system, which does get enabled when you install Game Creator 2 anyway. So let's see what we can do to make it go from primary motion to some arbitrary key controls like IJKL, for instance. And I can even put in my jump in there as well if you want. So let's create, so I'm going to create an asset, and right at the bottom where it says input actions. So we can call this player input. So player input, we can add an action map. We just call this player controls. And we want to add an action of set it to value control type of vector 2. And we'll see why in a minute that we want to do that. And I'm just going to delete, or I'm going to use this new action it has here. We can add a binding. So basically we're telling it what action this is, a movement. There's no binding yet. And I'm going to delete this default one, but we're going to add an up, down, left, right composite binding. So it's going to create this 2D vector. So I'm going to call it IJKL for the keys I'm going to use. You can call it anything you want. It's based on a 2D vector. So now we want to tell it what keys to use. So we click the path. So on the Mac, there's a button, there's a listen button that's, you can't see it. But you click it and then it'll listen for the button. So for up, I want I. And for down, I want K. Left, J, and right. We want to click that button first. Okay, right, L. So we have that. I'm going to add also an action for a jump. So let's do that. So the binding on this one would be a button. So the type would be button. And the binding itself, we can tell it to use the spacebar or any other keyboard command we want. So now you have to save the asset. Once it's saved, you can close this down. So now what we have to do, and the documentation is very sparse on this. If you look at the documentation, it doesn't tell you anything on how to use this. It just has the input in the visual scripting actions instructions section. It has this input section where it has just 6 different things that you can do. So enable input map is the one we want. So what we need to do at the beginning of your game is to enable the input map first before it will work. So basically, we just create an empty here. I'm going to call it Game Manager. And we are going to add a trigger to it. So on start, we're going to add the instruction, and it's in the input category, enable input map. So then we drag our player input asset into it that we created. And then this drop down asks you which input map you want. The one we created was called player controls. And that should be all you need there. Now to get the player to use the input map, we go to the player controller and change this from primary motion to input system, input action vector 2. So, and then we will put in player input and player controls movement. And that should be all it takes to get this to work. So if I click play, we'll see if it works now with my new input. So it is working. You have to click on the game window. So it's working with IJKL, and we just fell off the world. But so now it works. It does not work with WASD. Let's try that again. Because I didn't click on the game window there. I didn't have it focused. So WASD, nothing. IJKL is what's working now. So now we've got it using the new input system input map. So we also did the spacebar. So let's add a trigger. I'm just going to create another empty called input manager. And you can really put it anywhere. I could have put it on the other one too, but just to keep it clean, I'm going to just say on start. And that's going to be, instead of on start, we want input on input button and not jump. We want input system, input action perform. And then we drag it in to there, and then we say player controls, jump. And that should do it. Let's click play. And we mapped space to the jump, so now I can, and of course, yeah, that's not going to work because you have to tell it what to do when the player jumps. So you can go to so we need to add the instruction to go and jump. So add instruction, characters, navigation, instructs the character to jump. And the character is the player. So we're going to jump the player when the input jump player control is selected. So if we click jump, yeah, the player is jumping. So we've got our IJKL and our jump. New input system is now handling this and not the default Game Creator 2 input handler. So now that you've got it in an input system, we can easily remap the jump or add more bindings for it. So you could add a binding for, let's see, a gamepad. So if you wanted a gamepad button east, north, south, and what, this is like on your gamepad. So say the A button, it's the east button on your gamepad. So then a gamepad would then all of a sudden, just all you have to do is do that, click save asset. So now that you have this, you can easily add different bindings for your jump. Like you can change it here, you can change it to Z or whatever you want. And if I want to change it to Q, I can do that. And you just save asset and it automatically works. So let's just take a look at that. And I go Q, and then it's jumping now. So this offers a way to remap your controls and without using hard-coded actions. So by default in Game Creator 2, you would create a trigger, which would be, okay, you create a trigger, and then on input button, and you would say, not input system, but normally you'd say keyboard press. And this is how all the tutorials I've seen do it. So they just do it through here. So you say, okay, I want L, whatever, and then you add an instruction to, jump or whatever, or play a gesture, etc. So whatever action you want to do. But you're hard coding it. This way it's hard coded. You can't remap this at runtime. So, and most commercial games have the ability to remap it at runtime through a menu. So the best thing to use is the input actions of the new input system there, and then you can set up your all your actions and all your bindings in one place, and you won't have to hard code them in your game creator code. So when it comes to control rebinding, it's going to be a lot easier. That's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Click the like button and subscribe, and I'll be back with more Game Creator 2 tutorials as I come across things that I find that I need to remember. And these videos are as much for me as they are for you, and I hope you benefit from them. So we'll see you in the next one.